Hello, everybody. Wait, we don't have anyone yet. um, so hello, everyone. If you're just joining us, welcome to our graduation webinar focusing on options for children, I should say students with 22q deletion syndrome. We are so excited to have Donna with us, our amazing expert and partner in crime at the foundation. And Donna will be sharing her kind of expertise and research that she's found as far as options for graduation and various paths that could lead to for your child, as well as college eligibility and acquisition of functional skills. So we are very excited to have you all here. We have a big, I think we had over 60 people register for this event, which tells us how important of a topic it is for our community. Just a couple things we can go over before we get started. I'm going to let Donna take the lead on this, and she'll be sharing her slides in a moment. If you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will relay those out to her at the end of her presentation. And again, if you're just joining, my name is Lindsay Garcia. I'm the executive director of the foundation, and we also have Donna Cutler-Landsman with us, an expert in the 22q field. So Donna, I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here. And of course, we're getting to the end of the school year, and I know a lot of people are thinking about paths to graduation. And in my work with families, I've realized that this is a hot topic for families with children with 22q. So I thought we'd put together kind of an overview of what sort of issues arise when graduation is on the horizon, and try to help step you through some of the thinking behind this. So here we go. Let's see here. So what are the options? It's really interesting having been in this job over the last decade or so to realize that across the United States, there are multiple paths to graduation depending on the state. I had no idea there was such variety. But throughout the United States, there are options for a standard diploma, which is completing the high school requirements for your state. There is what is now called the College and Career Ready Diploma, which is a more rigorous diploma that indicates that a student is ready for college level coursework. And usually that involves 4 years of high school level English and language arts, and then 3 years of math, algebra, geometry, and probably algebra 2 trigonometry as sort of the pathway to a university level 4-year college career, and have that student ready to enter college without having to take a lot of remedial courses. There is a certificate of completion, which oftentimes students with disabilities are funneled into that path. And that seems to be an option where students are not able really to pass the level of algebra and geometry. So they attend school, they have modifications to their IEP that allow for different quality of work and a different rigorous curriculum. And so they would get a diploma, but it's not necessarily the standard diploma or the career ready diploma, which means that they're doing high school level coursework. The fourth path is a college, is a high school graduation, the GED. You've probably heard of that. That's the General Education Development Certificate. And that involves taking classes and passing a test, basically. The other consideration for students with 22q is, do you graduate at age 18 or do you delay graduation until age 22, which you're allowed to do under IDEA? This is a IEP team decision, but if your child isn't ready for life and for school and for independent living, they can get programming through the school district up until they turn age 21 that year. They're allowed under IDEA to continue getting programming through the school district. And all of these sort of segue into adult services consideration. So whether or not you are planning for your child to be involved with the long-term care program of your state, these adult services and the coordination of that somewhat is hinging on high school graduation and what path. So all of these are intertwined, and this can get rather complicated. So hopefully in this presentation, I'm going to try to shed some light on kind of how these things work. So diplomas across the United States, all diplomas are not created equal. There are huge differences across the United States for graduation pathways. This is state regulated and state dependent. The standard diploma, which we think of as a high school diploma, is offered in almost all states, but the requirements for getting that diploma are wildly different across the country. Some states allow students with disabilities to acquire a regular high school diploma, even if their work is modified or if they fail graduation testing. Other states have more rigorous standards. And if students can't complete the high school level classes or they cannot pass the exit exams, they're funneled into alternate diploma tracks. And this is approximately 21 out of the 50 states, and it may be your state. If you're wondering about where your state is as far as what the high school graduation requirements are, I would highly recommend that you go to the Department of Public Instruction for your state, look under graduation requirements, or talk to the special education department at your high school to find out what the graduation requirements are for where you live. There was a pretty interesting article that I read. You can access it at the website allfored.org. And this was done in 2017, but it was a comparison between different states and what their high school graduation requirements are and what kind of diplomas each state would offer at that time. So that was 4 years ago. I don't know if things have changed or if things are currently the same. But for me, having worked in Wisconsin all of my adult life as, in the field of education, Wisconsin has one diploma. Every child that goes through high school and graduates in the state of Wisconsin gets the same diploma. There is not separate diplomas. There's no certificate of completion or no career and college ready diploma. It's a standard diploma. But if you go to a state like California, that's different. That is funneled into different pathways. So it makes it a little bit harder for families to try to figure out. I've been to a lot of IEP meetings where if you want to modify the curriculum and change the requirements, if your child is having a lot of trouble accessing the curriculum, understanding the material, and is getting really stressed out, if you're in California, the IEP team is going to say to you, well, do you want to be on the certificate of completion track? And then we can change the requirements. Otherwise, they need to sit in these high school level classes. So that's not what happens in Wisconsin. It's not what happens in other states, but it's wildly different. So unfortunately, it is not something that's standardized across the United States and makes it really hard for families to navigate. So I wanted to go through what the difference is between these different diplomas and how this impacts a youngster as you're moving on through, if you have aspirations for the child to go to college, for example. So the standard diploma, or the diploma that's quote college and career ready, that may require testing. In 11 states, in order to get that diploma, you have to go through a state exit exam. It requires passing specific classes. For example, algebra, high school algebra, geometry, a language, English and language arts class at a high school level. Usually students earn that at age 18. It may be necessary for college admission, and it usually is necessary for what you think of as a regular college university. Like if you have aspirations for your child to go to the University of Maryland or the University of Connecticut, usually a high school diploma is necessary for admission to those colleges. Sometimes they let you take classes without that high school diploma. But most of the time, if you're going to be admitted as a freshman, you need to have graduated high school. It may impact job opportunities. So if you're asking, if an employer wants to know if you've graduated high school and what kind of diploma your child has earned, it may impact the job that they can apply for. A lot of times on those job applications, it just basically says, have you graduated high school? And it doesn't really go into anything further. So, you know, whatever diploma you have, it's a graduation diploma. It is accepted by the military. Other diplomas are not. And it also allows for eligibility for federal student aid. A certificate of completion, which is in some states where special education students are funneled, is a non-college career-ready diploma. So basically, the understanding is if you're going through that type of diploma, that when your child exits high school, they're really not going to be super ready for a college level class. The graduation requirements are flexible. The academic work can be modified in accordance with the IEP. So, you know, for example, a student can take easier math classes. These kinds of diplomas can be accepted for college, and usually they're accepted for community colleges or smaller colleges. These diplomas are not accepted by the military. They may not be accepted for student aid for college, and I think that's dependent on the college, how they handle that. It may limit the job options, but you know, that depends on the job. This is, you know, it's hard to quantify this. And again, this option is state dependent. Some states don't have this at all, like Wisconsin does not even have this diploma. The GED, their General Education Development Diploma, consists of taking a test, basically. You test for a GED. It's 4 tests, math, reasoning through language arts, science, and social studies. It's accepted the same way as a high school diploma is accepted. The material that's covered is at a high school level. It must be earned, though, when out of high school. So you can't get your GED and simultaneously be enrolled in high school. So it's basically for people who are not actually enrolled. Homeschoolers can use this route to earn a high school diploma. But you know, the reality is that this is really not an easier route than getting a diploma in a school setting, because you have to pass this test. And a lot of students with 22Q are not great test takers. So this would likely not be the easiest route for a student with 22Q. So, you know, how does a family really go about deciding what to do with this? Obviously, each individual child is different, and it's differences with this syndrome. I would say that by and large, you know, completing that high school level curriculum for a lot of kids with 22Q is a bit of a stretch. I think that the anxiety and stress and the increased demands of high school level courses sometimes weigh pretty heavily on families. It's hard to complete this. It's hard to complete the homework. And oftentimes students really can have mental health complications if they're pushed beyond what they can handle academically. Some districts are really willing to be flexible. Certain districts will waive these high school graduation requirements and still award that diploma at the end of the route. The determination is whether or not you feel that college is a goal for your child. Is a 4-year college the goal, or a 2-year college, or would it be okay if your child went to a community college to start? Another pathway is going to a community college and getting some of these classes, and then segueing into a 2-year college or a 4-year college beyond that. Also, what kind of job do you want your child to have, and what is their career aspirations? What do they want to do with a career, and what kind of training is needed? And I think really a good, hard look at the feasibility of long-term goals. I understand that maybe a child would want to have a particular career, but I think it's important at some point to look at their the realistic behavior, how they're handling the coursework, and is it really something that they're going to be able to attain, or do you think that some other maybe type of job within that global category that they're interested in might be a better match for them? These are things that really need exploration and, time during high school to really try to figure out what kinds of jobs your child would be best suited for. What does the district bring to the table? Again, they are responsible for ages 18 to 21. If a child still has IEP needs, the district really needs to pull together a transition plan. And this is not a plan, and I've repeated this multiple times over the years of different presentations. You do not have to stay at the high school for these transition plans. You can be in a transition plan that is overseen with the high school monies and their budget and their staff, but is not at the high school itself. It can be community college classes, it can be work in the community, it can be adaptive living and functional skill practice within the community. And those are all things where the high school is orchestrating it and they're paying for that plan. You also need to take a look at what the state long-term care options are for your particular state and what the requirements are for eligibility for services. And all of that is important to understand what kinds of skills your child needs, what support might be available through your state, and how to actually get into that program if you feel it's something that your child will need long term. So these diploma decisions are hard ones. And, some people in some states have less stress because there's only one diploma. So, you just kind of march through school and you exit with a high school diploma. In other states, there's tests to pass. There's different diplomas that are offered, and IEP teams will steer you off of that diploma track if your child is having a lot of trouble accessing the curriculum and mastering the material and passing the tests in their classes. So basically, we need to think about a timeline for planning all of this. I know that this is a huge decision for families. So how do you actually go about even starting to think through this? First of all, you need testing, and you need to really understand what your child's strengths and weaknesses are. Do not, I repeat, do not rely on grades. Grades are subjective. Staff is often well-intentioned. These kids with 22Q are delightful. They're sweet as can be. They work hard. Staff likes them, and they're likely to give them a grade on their report card that really does not reflect where their academic level is. So really, it is important to test them and to get a deep dive, especially into math and into reading, to understand where their skill level is. Are they reading at a 4th grade level, a 6th grade level, a 9th grade level? Where are their math skills? Can they handle money? Can they handle, time, elapsed time? Are they understanding story problems in math well enough to be able to key into a calculator and solve a real world math problem? So I really recommend that there's testing that is done before students enter high school to try to understand what their needs are so we can program for these needs effectively during the high school years. Freshman year can be used to try out if it's hard for you to decide, I want a certificate of completion track if you're in one of those states versus a diploma track. You can try out that diploma track freshman year and see how it goes. Try out the advanced curriculum, see if your child can handle it. And I would try to get them in some type of employment, even if it's volunteer work. Send them off to some of these summer camps, give them a away from home living experience and see how that works out. Try for feedback, understand what their needs are, especially the social needs and the emotional needs, and whether or not they're going to really need that long-term support. Sophomore year, I would definitely contact the Department of Public Instruction or your department in your school district that handles graduation counseling department and figure out what the requirements are for graduation and what agencies in your state for long-term care require for eligibility. And map out that transition plan with the school district. And this is not just a plan that said this child is going to graduate and go to college. I've seen IEPs with a one sentence plan. This child is going to go and become an aeronautical engineer and they're going to go to college. That's the plan. It's completely ridiculous. This transition plan needs to be specific. It needs to have information in it where there's assessments, where there's not only interest inventories, but actually work experiences where they can document what that child needs. There needs to be an assessment on their independent living skill attainment and how well they are grounded in some of those activities of daily living and how they're going to actually pass these classes and attain what they need to attain. If their goal long-term is college, how are they going to get to a level of high school competency to be able to go to college, to be able to pass the college classes? So that transition plan should be multiple pages long. It's not a couple of sentences. Junior year, the IEP team should be bringing in state agencies. There's a Department of Vocational Rehab that should be brought in. Your state long-term care program should be brought to the table. And those agencies should come in to these IEP meetings and plan that transition program with the district, talk to you about what eligibility is for your child, get your child on a wait list, have your child come to the program, do the intake interviews. You should make appointments with therapists and doctors who have been treating your child to get written documentation on their need for work accommodations and long-term care needs, because you're going to need this documentation for applications for Social Security, as well as long-term care, as well as accommodations that you might be requesting in a college setting. So that junior year, you're going to be busy getting all of these things set up. Usually there's an age 16 kind of benchmark for when these agencies start getting involved with your child. Also in junior year, obviously you're going to start your college search. So where might your child want to go to college? What training options are available during the summer, maybe before their senior year? You're going to want to visit schools and discuss what future supports will be needed. I would highly recommend that you think long-term. This is not a short-term decision. I think sometimes families are thinking, I want my child to go to college, and that's kind of my long-term goal. But with this syndrome, my recommendation is you really think lifetime. You think about what your child is going to need over the span of their lifetime. There are many kids that go to college with 22q and they've gone to college, but then they return back home without services. So at this juncture, when you're kind of planning all this out, I think you want to really start thinking, what is the long-term plan? How much care is my child really going to need? And how do I set them up in the best possible way to get that? Senior year, you would apply for Social Security. If your child is graduating at that point and going off to college or to a program that works with children with special needs, you might want to look for long-term care eligibility. You would definitely look at that vocational rehabilitation programming and then some type of transition program or college. So at that juncture, you're going to need to make a decision. Does my child graduate at age 18? Or am I going to have my child stay with the school district and ask them to pull together this program until age 21? So that's a decision that a lot of families need to make at that juncture. And it needs to be very clear with the school district before the kid walks out the door what the intention is. If your intention is to have a transition program run by the district under IDEA, then that needs to be decided before they walk out the door with a diploma. So, important IEP considerations. Agencies like the long-term care agency, Social Security, and so on are going to be using what's written in that IEP to help them determine whether your child qualifies for services. The category of disability is really important here. So make sure that it correctly reflects the needs at the time of graduation. In this syndrome, because there's a change over time, sometimes that category of disability changes. Oftentimes, students with 22q start off under the OHI or other health impaired category or speech and language disability, but by the time they exit high school, that may change to an intellectual disability categorization or an autism, depending on whether or not that's showing up and whether or not a child's been identified as having being on the autism spectrum. And if you didn't see our presentation that was done a week and a half ago or so, I would highly recommend that you log in. It's going to be on YouTube. Lindsay will let you know where you can access that. But that talks about how these agencies determine whether or not they're going to allow eligibility, if they're going to approve a young adult for services. So that category of eligibility on the IEP is important because that's also part of this eligibility piece for long-term care. That exit IEP really needs to honestly reflect where the child is at the time of graduation. What is the barriers to employment? What are the vocational goals? What are the independent living skills that are needed? Where are the academic levels? And it has to include this realistic transition timetable. So that exit IEP is a really important document. The school needs to be planning these transition steps, including inviting adult agencies to the IEP meetings, determining at those meetings who is going to pay for services, and then assisting in locating and applying for programs. It is really critically important before your child exits at age 18 that there's assessments done. And those assessments should include a current IQ using something like the WISC-5, the current academic levels, functional skills, including communication, and adaptive skill needs. And I like to use something that's a pretty comprehensive transition adaptive skill assessment, something more rigorous than the BASC. Often that's a sort of a subjective kind of assessment that's used. And that will help ascertain what kinds of things are really needed, because it's really sort of useless to plan a program and not have the documentation of what sorts of things are available and what sorts of things are needed. They should be in depth. So I think it's important to really reach for the stars. I know a lot of families would love for their children to go off to college. I was one of those parents as well. I wanted my child with 22q to attend a university or college, but we need to do this carefully. You need to plan it in a way that is going to allow that to happen, but also allow your child to still get the support they need through state agencies. So understand what the long-term financial and support impact graduating at age 18 with a diploma may have on further eligibility for services. If your children are not independent and ready, do not let the school district just push them through. Passing classes with a lot of support, if you're sitting there doing the homework with them, if they have a one-on-one aid, it's not the same thing as being college and career ready. Ask yourself, would I be able to have my child exit the door and be on their own on a college campus? So students can really walk through graduation with their class without getting this paper diploma. And if you do that, they can quote unquote graduate, but still get services through the school district. Once they receive this diploma, even if it's a certificate of completion, which says that they attended, but they don't have the high school skills, once they get that piece of paper, their rights to any services, any funding through the school district ends. So you would be foregoing all that money that the school district could funnel in to help your child from ages 18 to 22 if you take that certificate of completion diploma at age 18. And I did mention to you, well, why would that matter? Well, long-term care services over a lifespan can run over $1 million. Usually, and I will talk to you about the care that I'm aware of, which is current prices. Programming for kids with 22q at an adult long-term care level, where somebody is dropping in a couple times a week to do some assistance with budgeting or assistance with organizational skills or doctor's appointments or problem solving. That level of care, which is only a couple times a week, can run over $25,000 per year. So, most of these agencies charge between $30 an hour to $60 an hour for an agency to have your child on their rolls. So if you extrapolate that over time, and over many years, that can run into a lot of money. And if your child is not in that long-term care waiver program, that's something that would be out-of-pocket expenses. There have not been a lot of studies on the syndrome, but the ones that I'm aware of indicate that adaptive skills for this population lag. Even with those with higher IQs, the ability to really live independently without some level of support is more unusual than usual with the syndrome. Many adults with 22q need assistance to live independently. So this can include help with budgeting, decision-making, completing tasks that are unrehearsed, planning and preparing meals, complex communication, managing complicated situations. Now, going off to college and going away to college without the necessary supports or social skills are anecdotal data. And this is pooled with like the VCSS Virtual Center, my experience with this helping families, and this is anecdotal. But young adults that just go off to college, oftentimes that is not a very good outcome. If the supports are not there, the necessary supports through the college, or if social skills are poor, many of those young adults have a lot of trouble adjusting to life on a college campus and managing the coursework independently. But there's ways to plan for this that can lead to better success. So young adults that in our experience that have remained closer to home or that are in programs that are geared to transition skill growth have had a lot better success meeting the demands of life. These are specialized college programs. There's many stories of adults with 22Q that are working as adults, that have friends, they're managing to live an enriched life in community as adults. So this idea of a young adult with this just being in the house playing video games in the basement, it does not have to be at all like that. These adults can have jobs, they can be in their own apartments with some level of oversight and support. They can be involved with their with friends and have an enriched life. But you have to plan carefully with this. And you have to figure out, what high school diploma track am I taking? How does that diploma track impact long-term care services? What care services is my young adult going to need? What are some college options that might be available that they would be successful at? So when you get to this level of high school, what do? So there's a couple different pathways. You can decide to stay with the school district, and then the school district can pull together a transition program ages 18 to 21. This can include community college, it can include work, it can include academic support, it can include life skills development. Staying with the school district keeps that child under IDEA, and it helps segue to adult life. You could also determine that we're ready to move on and we're ready to graduate with a diploma. And then you have to think of what college program may be appropriate. So I would recommend that you take a look at this Think College website. Now that website is a website that looks at college programs, and it's for primarily young adults with intellectual disabilities. But it also has a lot of colleges there that work for both intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities, and some autism spectrum program. So for kids that are a little higher functioning, we want to have a program that matches the cognitive level of your child and a program that they're going to feel comfortable in. I've listed some programs here that I've investigated for other families with 22Q. There's a college living experience, Mansfield Hall, which has several campuses across the United States. Now, Mansfield Hall is not a college, but it's a program where students that live there are enrolled in a local community college, and they get living assistance at that dorm. It's like a dorm house type setup where they get help with executive functioning skills and social skills, but they're enrolled at a college nearby. And Mansfield Hall is kind of a unique program. Maplebrook in Amelia, New York has a transition program that is for work experience. It's for college, community college. It's for those kinds of things. It's an on-campus residential program, but there's a lot of wraparound support. Edgewood College in Madison, Wisconsin has a cutting edge program. It's a very unique program, and those kids go to college, take college courses on the Edgewood campus, but it's kind of a cohort where they get a lot more support in a small group. They live together in the dorm, and they have counselors that kind of step them through everything from social issues that might come up to daily living skills, but they're on the college Edgewood campus. Beacon College is another program, and that's more for kids who are pretty much college ready, but that they need a lot more assistance and sort of hand holding and a lot more academic support. So these are just examples. There are programs all over the United States that are springing up that are more of these transition programs for kids that are just not college and career ready. Their diplomas maybe were modified, but they really like that college living experience. So the 22Q Family Foundation Education Station is here to assist you guys. I know that this is a pretty daunting decision. It's a huge decision because it's a financial decision as well as an emotional decision for your family. And you want to be informed and make the decision in an informed way so that you, in your particular state, are following the graduation requirements, understand what is available to you, and can get help with convincing the IEP team that your child may need some of this additional support. So if you are at that level right now and think that you're going to need some of that assistance, if your child is really at the high school level, feel free to reach out and apply for assistance through the foundation. So at that, I am going to end this presentation point of this and open to questions.
Well, thank you, Donna. That was so informative. It's just the way you laid everything out as far as the different decisions we have to make for our children along the way, sooner than later. And we do have quite a few questions, so I'm going to get those over to you. So the first one is, it says, my daughter is in 11th grade. Her goal is to go to a radiology program at her community college and then move on to a 4-year college. And she notes that her daughter is highly functioning. She'll be reaching out. Should we be reaching out to the community college or ask about IEP accommodations at the community college, or the high school will do that?
I would not leave it to the high school. I would definitely take upon myself to do that. And I would also encourage you to get some current testing and figure out where the functional needs are. There is a span in this syndrome. There really is. But sometimes kids are characterized as, doing really well at high school by staff, but there's a lot of hand-holding that's going on behind the scenes. And when they get to college, that hand-holding is not going to be there anymore. So I think it's really important to get a very clear picture of where the kids are actually functioning. So I would reach out to the school, ask for that battery of tests, and definitely contact the community college. And, I'd have a conversation about whether you feel there's long-term care needs that you think are going to happen over the lifetime. And that's going to make a big difference in how you're going to proceed. Whether that's the path or whether you feel that your child's going to be able to go to college, be independent, and graduate, do the job that they're trained for, and be self-sufficient.
And I think we talked a lot about this on our previous webinar we had a few weeks ago about, it was 22Q autism and long-term care needs. And Dr. Anschel kind of said an important statement that a lot of times we, in our eyes as a parent, we want to reach for the stars, like you mentioned, but sometimes it's not as realistic, and we're kind of muddying our decision making and what they can actually do. And so he mentioned, when you're filling out that type of paperwork, whether it's parent assessments or so forth, that you are really thinking, do they do this like without any prompting, whether it's self-care and things like that, or can they do it with support? That's totally different. And so I think that's something just to kind of keep in mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next question says, we have implemented many of your suggestions, but our child or young adult needs to be motivated and engaged in wanting and accepting to transition and receive services. We can make all the plans and supports, but the child or young adult needs to buy into this effort. Many kids with 22Q don't seem to have the self-awareness to understand what they need. we find that ours needs time to mature quite a bit to have a more realistic self-awareness. What are your suggestions to plan for this?
Yeah, that motivation piece is a hard one because I think sometimes these kids feel really defeated by the time they're graduating high school. They've just had enough of it. And I would really change focus. I've noticed with the young adults that I've dealt with that are unmotivated, that we completely change focus out of the academics and move more to independent living on their own in an apartment, having a job, and not so much at, trying to get more of this academic coursework down their throats. I think many of them, this is very, very hard. They learn best on the job. They learn in a realistic, I'm going to try this myself and I'm going to practice it in a job in the setting. So if they're still in high school, I'm not sure what age level this child is in, but I would shift gears and move toward goal setting for adult living and independence and in the community. And most of these young adults really aspire to having their own place, having a job, being their own boss. And that's attainable for a lot of young adults with 22Q with some background scaffolding support. And, there's not a lot of them, I don't think, that could just be off on their own and not have either family or community programming supporting them. But, many of them are able to do a lot day to day independently, and they want to be independent. So I would try to feed on that piece of it and just shift gears. Making them as much of a decision maker as possible. But you have to also be careful about this. And I am going to say this, that, when they turn 18, they are their own decision maker under the law. So they can graduate themselves. They can sign off on the IEP. Even if as parents you say, that's not a good decision, we want you in a transition program, ages 18 to 22, we think you need help, et cetera, et cetera. If you do not have guardianship of them and they're going that route, if they're bucking what you want, that's going to be a problem for you because they can sign off themselves. Because when they turn 18, they're considered an adult. So you have to know your child and whether they're willing to take your advice and go along with what you're wanting for them or feel is important for them. If you feel that they are really going to sign off and it's absolutely not what you want to have happen, you feel it's to their detriment, you might consult an attorney and consider guardianship, given what the situation is. When we were faced with that at age 18 with my young adult who's now in his 30s, but at that point, he was really willing to listen to us as far as what we were saying. Other adults may not be that willing to do that. So you have to kind of know, we never needed to go the guardian route because in our case, there was his willingness to listen to us. But if that's not the case, they're not motivated, they can sign the IEP that they want to graduate. And even if it's a certificate of completion and they have no plans and they're not motivated, they're out the door. And you've lost your funding for programming from 18 to 22.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up about guardianship because we did a webinar probably a few years back with Mike Webster, an attorney. And so that if you want more information about guardianship and what that looks like, you can, as well as all our webinars, we post them on our YouTube channel. So that you can find us on YouTube at 22Q Family. And there you can watch back all of these webinars because there's some really important information when it comes to guardianship. Someone asked, obviously the importance of the graduation ceremony is important too. Just that transition to adulthood and kind of what that looks like. And for a lot of our parents, that's important. If your child chooses to go the GED route, obviously you cannot do that until after you're out the door. But do most schools allow students to still graduate and walk?
Yes. Absolutely. So at age 18, most school districts will allow your youngster to quote unquote graduate. So they'll get a cap and gown, they'll walk through the ceremony, their name will be announced with all their classmates. You could have a graduation party, you can invite kids over. The only difference is they don't get the paper. They do not get the diploma paper.
Mhm.
And what I emphasize with a lot of 22Q youngsters is they are graduating, quote unquote, the high school. They're moving into the 18 to 22 transition program that's offered through the district. It's a different program. And I think that is a different mindset than they're still in high school, because that makes a lot of kids feel defeated. To give you an idea of what happened in my own personal experience with this, with my own son. So he walked through graduation, cap and gown. We had a party at the house. His friends came over. There wasn't any issue with the diploma. He had completed all of the requirements for a quote unquote a high school diploma, but it was all under his IEP. And there were a lot of other things that he needed. He was not independent at that point. So he walked during graduation, did not get the paper. The next year, he went to the district administration center, not the high school. And he was provided tutoring in math and in reading comprehension and in his community college classes. He went to Madison Area Technical College. He went for a small business diploma. So he took small business classes at the local college. He was helped through the high school to tutoring in those classes. In addition, he got community support with issues like grocery shopping and budgeting and planning for taking his medications and managing social skills. All of that was provided through the school district. That first year, I think he stayed at home. The next year, we got an apartment for him. The school district helped by bringing somebody into that studio apartment and helping him with that apartment, getting things set up there. So this was a 3 to 4 year program that we did in conjunction with the school district. This was still under IDEA. He also had work experience built in there. So there was some work opportunities for him. I know he worked in a couple different places at that time, it was several years ago. But at that point, he also had applied for Social Security. We were on the long-term care list for adult long-term care services through the state of Wisconsin. So that's kind of what this program was for him. It was very flexible. It was done in conjunction to the school district. If some of you have my book, I don't know how many of you listening out there have it, but in that book, I explained that transition program. So you could see the step-by-step pieces of that program that we put together with the district. This was all under IDEA. It was all paid for by the school district through the Department of Vocational Rehab. When he graduated with a regular diploma at age 21 through the school district, he then segued into the state of Wisconsin long-term care program. And that program has been assisting him ever since. And he gets in Wisconsin, it's under what they call as the IRIS program. So it's a self-determined way to spend a budget. So he's given a budget every year and he can decide how his budget is spent that's going to meet his individual needs. So every year we sit down as a family and try to figure out what he needs and pull his budget and his helpers together that we think he needs for that year. That program is changeable and he is in direct control of his money from the state. And that's how Wisconsin does their adults. And he was considered an adult with a developmental disability through the state of Wisconsin with 22Q. So that's how we pulled that together. Every state has different requirements again and different adult programs, which is why it's really critical that, families understand the graduation options through your state. what kind of diploma your child will be earning, whether that diploma is going to get them into colleges, who's going to help them with all that, how's it paid for, what agencies are available. It's all state dependent. So, there's 50 different there's probably 100 or 150 different pathways out there, for all of you. So it really needs to be figured out on a person by person basis.
Well, thank you for sharing your personal experience with that, because I think it's helpful. And yeah, like you said, I mean, every kid's different, every state's different. There's lots of decisions to be made. We had one other question that just came in. When college isn't an option, what options are there? I was going to start by just sharing a little bit about Career Pathways, which is our other program that we offer here at the foundation. So Career Pathways came to be after we just had a lot of outreach for supporting young adults through this adult transition into adulthood, and a lot of families complaining about vocational schools and how they weren't really fitting the needs of our specific 22Q community. So in partnership with our career coach, Jason Osborne, he works closely with young adults. He does help with college searches, but I would probably relay that first to Donna. But if your child is not on the college route and is more interested in, getting a job, getting job readiness skills, resume building, interview skills, Career Pathways is the program I would recommend. You can find that also on our website, along with more of what Donna does with Education Station on our website at 22qfamilyfoundation.org. But his primary focus is he usually gets a kind of intake call with finding skills and interests of your child, and then working with that. He's really big on just job internships. So getting your feet wet, trying out different things to see what sticks, what you like. And then kind of goes from there. But that's also another program that we offer. So yeah, I don't think for a lot of our kids, and what I'm been learning over the past 6 years doing this, is there are a lot of our children that don't go to college, or maybe they start and they decide it's too much for them. We do obviously have some that go all the way, but there's quite a few that really just want to be independent. They want to have a job, they want to make their own money, and that is another option. So internships, 2 or 4 year program, vocational schools, trade schools. Is there anything you want to add about that question, Donna?
Yeah, I think that also to rethink the idea of what college is, because there's really a wide range of colleges. And there's been a lot of programs springing up around the country. And I mentioned a few of these. I'll go back a slide or so. I would look at some of these programs. Just you can Google these on the website and kind of see what these programs are all about, because I get it. Going off to a 2 or 4 year college for a lot of kids with 22Q would not necessarily be a successful experience. But a lot of these programs are really geared for this whole transition experience. And it is college, but it's not really an academic immersion, what we think of as a traditional college. They're located close to college campuses, but they really work on life skills, work skills, maybe dabbling in a couple university classes. And it could be a class that would even be, taking a music class or taking an art class. Just that experience of being with kids their age on a college campus. But these programs offer a lot of support with, with counselors, adults that are going to guide them in lieu of parents. So it's a lot more hands-on support that you wouldn't get if you were just going to college and, registering for a dorm. You might get a house fellow or somebody, but nobody that's going to give you that type of hand-holding support. I was just looking at one of these programs the other day for a young adult I've been working with in Vermont, and that program was very interesting. It was with the University of Vermont. These kids lived in shared apartments. They cooked, each child needed to cook one meal for the group per week. They did a lot of social activities together as a group. They could take classes at the University of Vermont. There was work experience built in if they wanted to coordinate something with that. But it was a shared living. It was almost like a group home, but it was on a college campus or close to a college campus. And it was for kids 18 to 21, or, you know, or after they graduated high school, even 21 to 24, 25, that wanted that college living experience, but they weren't ready to be independent completely on a college campus.
Well, excellent answer for that. So I think those are all of our questions. No more, there were no other questions that came in. I just want to thank everyone for attending with us today. This was such a hot topic, and hope that you got a lot of your questions answered. And if you need to reflect or review this at any time, like I said, later in the week, it'll be on our YouTube channel. So please, we're trying to build up our YouTube followers. So if you subscribe, you'll get notifications and little dings when we upload new videos. And if you have any other questions at all, you can always reach out to Donna or I, so we can get those questions answered for you. But thank you again. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone. And thanks for being here. Thank you so much, Donna, again, for your time.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.